When your wife says, "I need space," most men beg her to stay. I made a different choice. After discovering her secret hotel receipts and midnight calls to her college ex, I gave Olivia exactly what she wanted, but on my terms. While she was finding herself in another man's bed, I transformed into someone she wouldn't recognize. Now she's back, tears in her eyes, calling our separation a terrible mistake. Too bad the man she left doesn't exist anymore, and the man I've become isn't interested in second chances. This is how I turned my wife's betrayal into the best decision she ever made for me. My name is Michael Bennett. I'm 53 years old, and until recently, I thought I had it all figured out. 15 years of marriage to Olivia. Not perfect, sure, but solid. At least that's what I told myself. We had our routine, our comfortable life in suburban Massachusetts, weekend barbecues with neighbors, and holiday cards that made everyone on Facebook jealous. I put in my hours at the office, climbing the ladder steadily, while Olivia built her own career. We'd come home, share a bottle of wine, and talk about her days. Sometimes I catch her looking at me across the dinner table with what I thought was appreciation. Now I wonder if it was just habit. Our anniversary dinner last April should have been the first warning sign. I went all out. Reservations at Costello's where we had our first date, arranged for the same corner table, even tracked down that wine she loved from her honeymoon. When I raised my glass for a toast, she smiled, but her eyes were somewhere else entirely. To 15 more years, I said. She clinked her glass against mine. 15 years. Hard to believe, isn't it? There was something in her tone I couldn't place. Not nostalgia, not warmth. Something closer to surprise. Like she couldn't quite believe she'd stayed this long. On the drive home, she was quiet, staring out the window while I chatted about plans for the summer, about maybe finally taking that trip to Italy we'd been talking about for years. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd made different choices?" she asked suddenly, still looking out the window. "What do you mean?" "Nothing. Just thinking out loud." When we got home, she kissed me lightly and went straight to bed, claiming a headache. I stayed up, nursing a bourbon, telling myself everything was fine. The next day, she was back to normal, rushing to get ready for work, stealing my coffee, complaining about her busy schedule. I convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. But deep down, something had shifted. I just wasn't ready to see it yet. Our friends Rob and Susan hosted a dinner party that weekend. I was in the kitchen helping Rob with drinks when I overheard Susan ask Olivia, "So, how are things really going with you two?" I paused, glass in hand, straining to hear Olivia's response. "Fine," she said. "You know, same old, same old. Just fine." Susan pressed. There was a pause. "He's a good man," Olivia finally said. "Always has been." Not "I love him." Not "we're happy." Just "he's a good man." Like I was a reliable appliance. I walked back into the dining room, drinks in hand, smiling like I hadn't heard a thing. But that night, lying in bed next to my wife of 15 years, I felt like a stranger in my own life. I should have said something then. Should have asked the hard questions. But the truth is, I was afraid of the answers. Instead, I did what I always did, convinced myself everything was fine. Just a rough patch. Every marriage has them. I had no idea that the ground beneath our perfect little life was about to crack wide open. It was a Tuesday night in September when I caught the first real glimpse of trouble. The Patriots had just lost, and I'd gone to bed early, frustrated with their performance. Around midnight, I woke up to an empty bed. No Olivia. Strange. I went downstairs, expecting to find her watching TV or working. The house was dark except for a soft glow from our back porch. Through the glass door, I saw Olivia pacing, phone pressed to her ear, smiling and gesturing animatedly. Not the polite smile she'd given me lately, but a genuine one that lit up her whole face. I stood frozen in the darkness, watching my wife come alive for someone else. I should have confronted her right then. Instead, I slipped back upstairs and pretended to be asleep when she finally came to bed. The next morning over coffee, I kept my tone casual. "You were up late." "Just had some work stuff," she replied without looking up from her phone. At midnight, a flash of something, irritation, guilt, crossed her face. West Coast client. Time difference. Plausible. But after 15 years of marriage, I knew when Olivia was lying. "Anyone I know?" I pressed. "Just Caroline from San Francisco." She grabbed her coffee. "I need to get ready. Early meeting." I knew Caroline. Definitely not who Olivia had been talking to last night. That evening, Olivia texted she'd be home late. When she arrived around 10 p.m., she smelled of wine and men's cologne. Her lipstick was smudged. "How was your dinner?" I asked, trying to sound normal. "Fine. The Chicago team is finally on board with the new strategy." "Chicago? I thought you were meeting the Boston group tonight." A slight pause. "Right, Boston. Sorry, I'm tired." She headed upstairs for a shower, and I sat there, heart pounding. Olivia never confused her clients. Never. The next day, I checked her browser history and email. Nothing suspicious. I was about to close the laptop when a notification popped up. A new message in an email account I didn't know existed. The sender, David Mercer. Her college boyfriend. I didn't open it. The subject line told me everything. "Missing you already." For the next 2 weeks, I watched as my wife gradually disappeared from our life. Not physically, she still came home most nights, still slept in our bed, but emotionally, she might as well have been living on another planet. Olivia started working late almost every night. When she did come home for dinner, she'd spend the entire time checking her phone, smiling at messages I wasn't allowed to see. If I asked about her day, she'd give the shortest possible answer before turning the question back on me, barely listening to my response. Our weekend rituals vanished. The Saturday morning runs, the Sunday brunches at Carson's where we'd spent 15 years arguing over the crossword, all gone, replaced with work emergencies and meetings with clients that somehow always fell on weekends. I tried telling myself there could be an innocent explanation. Maybe David was just consulting on a project. Maybe they were just catching up as old friends. Maybe I was paranoid. But deep down, I knew better. The breaking point came when I found the receipt. I was doing laundry. Yes, I still did her laundry, even as she was slipping away, and emptied her coat pockets before tossing in the wash. That's when I found it. A receipt from the Harbor View Hotel on the Cape, dated the previous Wednesday. A Wednesday when she told me she was at a conference in New York. I stared at that piece of paper for a long time. The Harbor View is where we'd spent our 5th anniversary. It was her special place. And now she'd taken someone else there. That night when she came home, I kept the receipt in my pocket like a loaded gun. "How was your day?" she asked, kicking off her heels in the hallway. "Interesting," I replied. "I found something while doing laundry." Her expression didn't change, but her eyes, those eyes I'd loved for so long, flickered with something between fear and defiance. "Oh," she said, keeping her voice casual. I could have confronted her then, could have pulled out the receipt and demanded answers. But something stopped me. Maybe pride. Maybe fear of what would happen once those words were said out loud. Or maybe I just needed more evidence before blowing up 15 years of marriage. "Just an old photo of us," I lied. "From that weekend in Vermont." Made me think about how long it's been since we took a trip together. Relief washed over her face. "We've both been so busy," she said, and kissed my cheek before heading upstairs. That night, I lay awake watching her sleep, wondering how we'd gotten here, wondering if there was anything left worth fighting for. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed her. I told my office I'd be working remotely, then parked a block from our house and waited. At 8:15, Olivia left for work wearing an outfit I'd never seen before, a fitted blue dress that definitely wasn't standard office attire. She looked beautiful. She looked like a woman going to meet a lover. I kept a safe distance behind her car, heart pounding so hard I could barely focus on the road. She didn't drive toward her office. Instead, she headed for the highway, then took the exit for Logan Airport. My stomach dropped. She hadn't mentioned any business trips, hadn't packed a bag that morning. I followed her to the short-term parking garage, watched from a distance as she checked her makeup in the rearview mirror, then headed to the Delta terminal with only her purse and a small carry-on I hadn't seen her pack. And that's when I saw him, tall, still handsome after all these years, waiting just outside the doors. David Mercer. The moment Olivia spotted him, her whole face transformed. She practically ran to him, throwing herself into his arms like a scene from a movie. I sat in my car, numb, as they disappeared into the terminal together. My wife was leaving, maybe just for the weekend, maybe forever, and I hadn't seen it coming. I didn't confront Olivia about her weekend getaway. She texted some story about an emergency client meeting in Chicago, and I pretended to believe it. What was the point? I needed time to think. For a week, we performed a sad dance around each other. She pretended everything was fine. I pretended I didn't know she was lying. We ate dinner together, discussing trivial topics. We slept in the same bed, careful not to touch. Like actors who'd forgotten why we were on stage, but continued reciting our lines. Then came that Tuesday night. I remember every detail. The chicken casserole she barely touched, the red wine she kept refilling, the way she wouldn't meet my eyes. "Michael," she finally said, setting down her fork, "we need to talk." Those 4 words, the death knell of relationships everywhere. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately," she continued, twisting her wedding ring. "I feel like I've lost myself in this marriage. In being Mrs. Bennet, I've forgotten who Olivia is." I remained silent, waiting for the blow I knew was coming. "I think." She took a deep breath. "I need space. To figure things out. To find myself again." There it was. If you'd asked me a month earlier how I'd react, I'd have said I'd fight for her. I'd remind her of our history, our love. I'd promise to change, to be better. But sitting there, looking at this woman who'd been secretly meeting her ex-boyfriend, who'd lied repeatedly, I felt something unexpected. Not rage, not heartbreak, just calm, clear certainty. "Space," I repeated, my voice steady. "What exactly does that mean?" She seemed taken aback by my composure. She'd expected tears, pleas, anger, anything but this quiet inquiry. "Well, I thought maybe I could stay at Rachel's for a while." "And how long is a while?" I asked, sipping my wine. "Until I figure things out." "Figure what out exactly?" "What I want. If this is still working for me." The casual cruelty stunned me. 15 years reduced to whether it was working for her. "I see." I nodded slowly. "And does David factor into this soul-searching?" Her face paled. "What?" "David Mercer. Your college boyfriend. The one you met at the airport last weekend. You followed me. You lied to me. Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" After Olivia moved to Rachel's, I didn't waste time wallowing in self-pity. Instead, I channeled my energy into finding out exactly what I was dealing with. Knowledge is power, as they say. First, I checked her phone records. Olivia and David had been in constant contact for months. Calls at odd hours, some lasting well over an hour. The first call dated back to February, right after she attended that alumni event I'd been too busy to join. 7 months of deception, while I remained clueless. Next, I reviewed our credit card statements. The Harbor View Hotel wasn't their only rendezvous. There were restaurant charges in Boston on nights she claimed to be working late, a weekend spa retreat when she was supposedly at a conference, even a jewelry purchase from a high-end boutique that I'd never seen her wear. Was it a gift for herself, or had David gotten the benefits of my credit line too? The most revealing discovery came from Olivia's laptop, which she'd left behind in her hasty departure. Her password had always been our anniversary date, and surprisingly, she hadn't changed it. Her email confirmed my worst fears. David wasn't just a fling. They'd been planning a future together. They'd even looked at apartments in Chicago, where his company was headquartered. The final blow was finding their photos. Dozens of them, stored in a hidden folder. Olivia and David at restaurants, at the beach, even one of them kissing in front of our favorite Boston landmark. She looked happier than I'd seen her in years. In one email, Olivia had written, "I never stopped loving you, even after all these years. What we have is real, and doesn't see me the way you do." Reading those words, something inside me hardened. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I was just done. When my phone rang and I saw Rachel's number, I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won out. "Michael, it's Rachel. I think there's something you should know." "Michael, it's Rachel. I think there's something you should know." Rachel's voice had that careful tone people use when they're about to drop a bombshell. I braced myself. "I'm listening." "Olivia didn't tell me the whole story when she asked to stay here. She made it sound like you two just needed a break, but..." She paused. "I saw her text messages when she left her phone in the kitchen. She's been seeing David Mercer for months." I almost laughed. "Yeah, I know. You know." She sounded shocked. "And you're just okay with it?" "Hell no, I'm not okay with it. But what exactly am I supposed to do? Beg her to pick me over her college sweetheart? Fight for a woman who's been lying to my face for months?" "I thought you'd want to know." "I appreciate that, Rachel. Truly. But I've already seen the emails, the hotel receipts, the photos, the writings on the wall." After hanging up, I pour myself a stiff drink and consider my next move. Olivia had expected me to fall apart, to chase after her, to make tearful promises about how I'd change. That's what the old Michael would have done. But that guy was gone. In his place was a man who refused to be anyone's second choice or backup plan. The next morning, I made 3 calls, to my lawyer, to a gym downtown, and to my buddy Steve who owned a high-end men's clothing store. If Olivia wanted space, I'd give it to her, but on my terms. For the next 2 weeks, I stuck to a strict routine. Up at 5 a.m. for a run, at the gym by 6, in the office by 8, home by 6 p.m. to cook myself a decent meal, no more takeout. Then reading or catching a game with friends instead of waiting around for Olivia to grace me with her presence. Olivia texted occasionally, casual messages asking about mail or whether I'd fed her plants. I kept my responses brief but polite. No accusations, no questions about when she was coming home, no hints that I was falling apart without her. Because I wasn't. The old Michael would have checked her location on our shared app 20 times a day. Would have driven past Rachel's apartment, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. Would have scrolled through her social media, looking for clues. The new Michael deleted the tracking app, unfollowed her on social media, and focused on getting his life back on track. Steve hooked me up with a whole new wardrobe, tailored suits, casual wear that actually fit, shoes that didn't look like they belonged to a college kid. My colleagues noticed the change immediately. Someone's up their game, Sarah from accounting commented when I walked into a meeting. Hot day tonight. I just smiled. Just felt like a change. The gym was paying off too. 15 years of desk work and comfort eating had taken their toll. But 2 weeks of consistent workouts had me feeling stronger already. My trainer, Jake, didn't let me slack off. Marriage problems? He'd asked on day 1, with the bluntness of someone who'd seen it all. Channel that energy, man. Nothing sweeter than the holy shit look when your ex sees you've leveled up. He was right. Every rep, every mile, every healthy meal was an investment in my future, a future that looked increasingly like it wouldn't include Olivia. 3 weeks after she left, I ran into her friend Diane at the grocery store. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Michael, wow, you look different. Good different. I smiled. Thanks. Just making some changes. I heard about you and Olivia taking a break. How are you holding up? Better than expected, actually. Sometimes a little space is exactly what you need to see things clearly. She studied me curiously. I'll bet Olivia would be surprised to see you like this. Probably, I agreed. But I'm not doing it for her. The truth was, I wasn't falling apart because I'd realized something important. A woman who could throw away 15 years of marriage for a college boyfriend wasn't worth fighting for. In giving me space, Olivia had unintentionally given me clarity. 6 weeks after Olivia asked for space, I hardly recognized the man in the mirror. The daily runs and gym sessions had melted away 15 years of complacency. My new clothes actually fit instead of straining against my midsection. Even my posture had changed. I stood straighter, walked with more confidence. But the physical transformation was just the tip of the iceberg. The real change was happening inside. I started reconnecting with old friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage. Began saying yes to invitations I would have declined before. Mark, my college buddy who'd moved to Boston 3 years ago, convinced me to join his Thursday night poker game. I hadn't played in years, but found myself looking forward to those evenings. Man, what the hell happened to you? Mark asked one night. You're like Michael 2.0. I laughed. Let's just say I got a wake-up call. Well, whatever it is, it's working. Amanda's friend keeps asking about you. Amanda was Mark's wife. The friend in question was Carol, an architect who joined us for dinner last weekend. We'd exchanged numbers and had been texting regularly. The first time I ran into one of Olivia's friends was at Whole Foods. I was examining avocados when I heard a familiar voice. Michael. I turned to find Laura, Olivia's colleague, staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Hey, Laura. How's it going? Good. She hesitated. You look great. Really great. We chatted for a few minutes. I could see the wheels turning in her head. This was not the broken man she expected to find. I knew what would happen next. Laura would immediately tell Olivia. Sure enough, my phone buzzed with a text later that evening. I heard you ran into Laura today. Yes, at Whole Foods, I replied. How are you doing? After weeks of nothing but logistical texts, this was her first personal inquiry. I'm doing well. Actually. You? Fine. Busy with work. 2 days later, Olivia texted again. There's a document I need from the filing cabinet. Would it be okay if I stop by to pick it up tomorrow? Sure. I'll be out from 7 to 9 p.m. The cabinet's unlocked. Actually, I can come by around 8. Maybe we could talk. There it was. The first move in the dance I've been expecting. She wanted to see the new Michael for herself. Sorry, I have plans. Another time. I kept it brief. The truth was, I did have plans. Dinner with Carol. Nothing serious. Just two adults enjoying each other's company. Her response came quickly. Of course. No problem. But I could picture her expression as she typed those words. The surprise. The confusion. Maybe even a twinge of jealousy. Because while Olivia had been finding herself with David, I've been finding a stronger, more confident version of Michael Bennett. A man who wasn't waiting around to be chosen. The dinner with Carol wasn't a date. Not officially, but it sure felt like one. We met at Carbone's, a small Italian place downtown that I'd never visited with Olivia. Neutral territory. So, Carol said as we settled in with glasses of wine, Mark tells me you're going through some changes. I laughed. That's one way to put it. Divorce. She was direct. I'll give her that. Separation. She needed space. I made air quotes around the word. Carol nodded knowingly. The space speech. Got that one myself 2 years ago. Turned out space was code for, I've been sleeping with my personal trainer. Ouch. Ancient history. She shrugged. Best thing that ever happened to me, actually. Forced me to figure out who I was without him. We clinked glasses to that. The conversation flowed easily after that. Work, movies, books. Nothing deep, nothing serious. Just two adults enjoying good food and company. It felt normal in a way nothing had since Olivia left. 2 days later, Olivia showed up at the house unannounced. I was just back from a run, still in my workout clothes, when the doorbell rang. She looked startled when I opened the door, eyes taking in my new physique. Michael, hi. I hope it's okay that I stopped by. What's up? I stepped aside to let her in, keeping my tone casual. I realized I left some important files in the office. She hesitated in the entryway. You look great, by the way. Thanks. The office is as you left it. She nodded, then headed down the hall. I didn't follow, just went to the kitchen to grab water. A few minutes later, she appeared in the doorway. The house looks different, she said, glancing around at the changes I'd made. The new furniture, the rearranged living room, the absence of family photos. Made some updates. She nodded slowly. Laura mentioned you looked good, but... She trailed off. You seem different. I am different, I replied simply. An awkward silence fell. This was typically where I'd jump in, fill the void, ask about her day, anything to make things comfortable. Not anymore. Are you seeing someone? She finally asked. Eyes not quite meeting mine. I raised an eyebrow. Would that be a problem? No, of course not. I just wondered. Interesting timing for curiosity. I leaned against the counter. How's David? Her cheeks flushed. That's complicated. I bet. Look, Michael, I've been thinking a lot about us lately. About the choices I made. I wonder if we could talk sometime. And there it was. The moment I'd half expected, but wasn't sure would actually come. Olivia was testing the waters, seeing if the door was still open. A month ago, I'd have jumped at the chance. Now, I wasn't so sure I wanted what she was offering. I've done a lot of thinking too, I said. Realized some important things. Like what? Like the fact that someone who truly loves you doesn't need space to figure that out. They don't sneak around behind your back with an ex. They don't lie to your face for months. She flinched. It wasn't that simple. Never is. But here's what I know now. I deserve better than being someone's backup plan or safety net. That's not what, isn't it? I cut her off. David wasn't what you expected. Reality didn't match the fantasy. So now you're wondering if good, old, reliable Michael might take you back. Tears welled in her eyes. You have no idea what I've been going through. You're right about that. Because you didn't talk to me. You made choices, Olivia. Now I'm making mine. What are you saying? Her voice was barely above a whisper. I'm saying your time for figuring things out is done. I've already figured things out. And I deserve someone who chooses me first, not as a fallback option. She stared at me, tears now flowing freely. This wasn't the Michael she'd left behind. The one who would have done anything to save our marriage. This was a man who knew his worth. I should go, she said finally. I didn't try to stop her. I expected Olivia to retreat after our confrontation, to lick her wounds and stay away. Shows how little I understood women, even after 15 years of marriage. Instead, she launched a full-scale campaign to win me back. It started with texts. Casual at first. Memories of good times we'd shared. Photos from our early days together. When I didn't respond, the messages became more direct. I miss you. I made a terrible mistake. Can we please talk? I answered politely but briefly, maintaining boundaries. This seemed to only intensify her efforts. Next came the emails. Long, emotional confessions about how confused she'd been, how David had manipulated her by playing on old feelings, how she'd realized he wasn't the man she remembered. According to Olivia, they'd already broken up. He'd wanted more than she could give because her heart was still with me. Too little, too late. Then came the accidental run-ins. Olivia showing up at my favorite coffee shop, appearing at the gym during my regular workout time, even joining the same cooking class I'd signed up for through Mark's wife. Michael, what a coincidence, she'd say, eyes wide with mock surprise. Yeah, right. The old Michael would have been flattered, even touched by her persistence. The new Michael saw it for what it was, a woman used to getting her way, suddenly faced with a challenge. I wasn't playing by her rules anymore, and it was driving her crazy. The turning point came at Mark and Amanda's dinner party. I'd brought Carol as my plus one, not as a date, but because we genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Halfway through appetizers, Olivia showed up. Apparently, Amanda had invited her too, hoping to play matchmaker. The look on Olivia's face when she saw me with Carol was worth 1,000 words. Shock, hurt, anger, all flashing across her features before she composed herself. Olivia, so glad you could make it, Amanda said, oblivious to the tension. You remember Carol from the art gallery fundraiser last year. The evening was painfully awkward. Olivia kept trying to engage me in private conversation, while I politely but firmly stuck close to Carol. By dessert, Olivia had downed too many glasses of wine and was throwing daggers with her eyes every time Carol laughed at one of my jokes. You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? Olivia cornered me in the hallway as I returned from the restroom, parading her in front of me. Not everything is about you, Olivia, I replied calmly. Carol is a friend who happened to be free tonight. A friend. She laughed bitterly. The way she looks at you isn't friendly. Maybe not, but that's between me and her. So you're sleeping with her? Her voice rose slightly. That's not your business anymore. Her face crumpled. I still love you, Michael. You have a funny way of showing it. I replied evenly. It was a mistake. A stupid, horrible mistake that I regret every day. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I'd loved for 15 years. The woman who'd shared my bed, my life, my dreams. The woman who'd thrown it all away for a fling with an old flame. I believe you, I said finally. I believe you regret it. But here's the thing, Olivia. I don't regret what happened. It showed me who you really are, and who I can be without you. Please, she whispered, reaching for my hand. Give me another chance. I gently disengaged from her grip. Already did. For 15 years. Time's up. When I returned to the dining room, Carol gave me a questioning look. I shook my head slightly and squeezed her hand under the table. She smiled. A real smile, not the practiced one Olivia had perfected over the years. I didn't look back as we left the party early. Didn't need to. I could feel Olivia's eyes on us all the way to the door. The divorce was finalized on a crisp autumn day, exactly 1 year after Olivia had asked for space. I signed the papers without regret or bitterness, just relief that this chapter of my life was finally closed. How do you feel? My lawyer asked as we left the courthouse. Free, I answered honestly. That evening, I hosted a small gathering at my new downtown condo, a place with no memories of Olivia. Mark and Amanda were there, along with other friends who'd supported me through the past year. Carol came too, now officially my girlfriend of 3 months. A toast. Mark raised his glass. To Michael 2.0, the upgrade nobody saw coming, least of all his ex-wife. Everyone laughed, including me. It was true. The man Olivia had left behind no longer existed. In his place stood someone stronger, more confident, and genuinely happier than I'd been in years. Through mutual friends, I'd heard Olivia had moved back to Chicago. Last I heard, she and David had broken up for good. Something about him not being ready for commitment. Ironic, considering what she'd thrown away for him. Rachel sent me a text that night. Olivia called again. Told her you were celebrating your divorce with friends. She cried. Thought you should know. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. Olivia's regrets were no longer my concern. Later, as the party wound down and I sat with Carol on my balcony overlooking the city lights, she asked, "Do you ever regret it? Not trying to save your marriage." I considered the question carefully. No. What I regret is not valuing myself enough from the beginning. I spent years being the person Olivia needed me to be, instead of becoming the man I actually wanted to be. And who is that man? Carol squeezed my hand. Still figuring that out. I smiled. But I like who I'm discovering. The next morning, I picked up my wedding ring from where it had sat in my dresser drawer since the separation. I'd kept it, not out of sentimentality, but because I hadn't decided what to do with it. Now I knew. I drove to the park where Olivia and I had first met 20 years ago, found a quiet spot by the lake, and threw the ring as far as I could. Watched it arc through the air and disappear beneath the surface with barely a ripple. Some men might call what happened to me a tragedy. A 15-year marriage ending because a woman needed space. But I see it differently. Olivia didn't destroy our marriage when she asked for space. She gave me the opportunity to discover my worth. The truth is, when someone asks for space, they've already made up their mind. They're just too cowardly to be honest about it. But sometimes, their cowardice becomes your courage. And sometimes, the space they take becomes the room you need to grow.